The world we live in faces large challenges, challenges that are existential for humanity, in need of solutions. In order to develop these solutions, we need radical interdependence, entrepreneurship, leadership, and passion. Bringing leaders together in an action-oriented community is essential. B for Good Leaders is building a global cooperative community in which entrepreneurship works together. Every month, we design a leadership dialogue in which you can learn and interact with influential leaders. Welcome to this month's edition of the B for Good Dialogue.
Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Francine Lemos. I'm board member of B-Lab Global and also a team member of B for Good Leaders. And today I'm here with Lynn Zevenberger, co-founder of B for Good Leaders. And we are today hosting the event from the fabulous studio of IT Global in Eindhoven. In the upcoming hour and a half, we will have the opportunity to discuss, understand and explore leadership. And as you know, this is one of the main topics of our upcoming summit in Amsterdam in May 11 and 12, and hope you all be joining us there. And it is the essence of what we are building at B for Good Leaders. Any member, all the members of our network have been selected because not only the way they lead, but because they are recognized by others as leaders committed to serving a purpose greater than themselves. To guide us today on this discussion, we have three amazing guests. Anuradha Chugh, CEO at Pukka Herbs, Alexia Michiels, partner at the Resilience Institute, and Christophe Fauconnier, founder and chair at Innate Motion, amongst others. We are also delighted to have all of you with us today. And as you know, it's not a name, this is supposed to be a dialogue. So if you have any question, any comment to do, please use the chat, post your suggestions, your comments and your questions. We want to be very interactive today. And what is the monthly dialogue? What is this all about and why we are doing this? We know the world is changing and it's changing very fast. And many industries require fundamentally shift and a new approach. We call that systemic change. And that can be risky but also rewarding. And one thing we are sure, to do that, we need courageous leaders. And the goal of B for Good Leaders is to bring together all those leaders to not only discuss, but to tackle the core challenges that we have, that we are facing, and act together in a radical interdependence. So we created this meeting space of dialogue in which we will bring together leaders and some great thinkers every month to discuss and to learn and to share their experience. So welcome.
And before we start, a little bit about the declaration first. As you know, we believe that entrepreneurs and business leaders are the key change makers who can unite their forces, their creativity, their people, their financials, their industries to build a new flourishing world, a regenerative economy. So we are building a closely knit group of truly committed business leaders to collectively build a market and create paradigm shifts, behaviors for a new economy. And we started in Rome. And in Rome, we had a very special thing happening at the end. I thought it was very emotional even. We had harvesters who went to all the breakouts, young people, a group of young people, and on the final day, on the Friday, an 18-year-old guy presented the outcome of all that and actually presented a declaration that was created by 600 people who were there. And that was also eventually signed by the 600 people, literally signed. Please take a look at it. The declaration is on the website and you can still sign it if you want. Before we start with the theme of today, we would like to show you again that declaration, read it aloud to you, and then we continue.
Be for Good Leaders Declaration. As Be for Good leaders, we commit to reframe the meaning of leadership by 1. Embracing radical interdependence, the fundamental principle governing life on Earth, as the golden rule for decision-making, leading to a regenerative impact. 2. Considering at least the next generation of humans in every business decision. 3. Measuring what matters to integrate systemic value creation into our definition of profit. 4. Challenging extractive economic models and taking a stand for the common good. 5. Mobilizing finance as a catalyst to transform the business perspective from short-termism to long-term shared value creation. We commit to guiding our companies and organizations to create a purpose-driven model that creates value for all. Through this joint leadership statement, we lay the foundation for collective actions and alliances, clearing the path for a new regenerative economy.
Before we head on to the first theme of today, I would like to introduce you to Paolo Cesare. Paolo is a founder and a partner of Nativa and a partner of Be for Good Leaders. And maybe, Paolo, you can explain to us how we intend to make the declaration not only part of our thinking and part of words, but how we can turn that into action at the upcoming summit.
Yeah, thank you, Len. This is quite an important challenge, actually, and it was quite interesting to be in Rome and to see also the birth of this declaration. So I think there are some slides that can help me. But anyway, in 2019, we read this article for New York Times talking about the trend of the year, or one of the trends of the year, that was to act as a benefit corporation. Because, not all the jurisdiction in the world, they have a law recognizing double purpose company. But at the same time, even if you have the jurisdiction and you have the law, maybe companies can have some constraints in becoming benefit corporation. So the trends of the year for the New York Times was to act as a benefit corporation. So based on this specific idea, we started to think how we can create actually governance model for organization for, whatever kind of organization a human being can actually create to act as a benefit corporation. So the main principle of benefit corporation, you can see in this slide, is that they have a purpose, they have a double purpose, but then they also have specific public benefit commitments, which has to be inserted into the bylaws of the organization. They can be 1, 2, or 3, as in this example. And this company, the mechanism of a benefit corporation is that they set objectives every year with respect to all the purposes they have inserted into the bylaws. And the next year, they will be required to set new objectives, but also to report progress on the objectives set the year before. So based on this idea, slide please, we actually decided to bring this governance model also to the Be for Good Leaders network. So we have a purpose, of course we have it, building a regenerative economy together. But then a purpose can be very inspiring, but then we need something that make it actionable. So we have those 3 lines. We exist to accelerate the transition towards a regenerative economy, creating the condition for a shared, durable prosperity. This will create social, environmental, and economic net positive value to a new model of regenerative leadership. And then this is the connection to what Len just explained through the video, that we have exactly 5 specific public benefit purposes. So now that we have this model, we can actually progress, we can actually work around them by setting objectives every year for each of these specific public benefit purposes. And so we're going to set those in Amsterdam. So we have set the purposes in Rome 2022. We're going to set the objectives through, the dynamic of the conference, of the meeting, of the summit. And then in 2024, we're going to set a new objective, but most important, we're going to report on the progress of the objective that we're going to set together in Amsterdam. Of course, this is not only related to the summit, which is a very important moment along the year, but also this meeting is going to be part of the setting of these objectives. It's what we have built. It's really a flow all year long, actually experience. So dialogue series are part of this moment and the annual of this process. We're going to harvest all the inputs that we'll collect during our discussion and conversation today, next month, and so on. And the annual summit will be the moment in which we're going to make it more clear and set the objectives for the year, for the next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Paolo. And
thank you, Paolo. It was really nice. And I love the way you put it as we are flowing through the summit. So what we are building here is much more than a summit. It's a network, and we need to build it together. So today is, as Paolo mentioned, we are harvesting. We need you to be involved because we are creating content and we are creating actions for the future. And now we are heading to the main topic of today's event, and we will discuss how we are reframing the meaning of leadership in order to collectively build a regenerative economy. That's why we need to start to understand what's the meaning of regenerative leadership. And if you want to build regenerative businesses, we need to shift the current way we lead business and get inspired by nature in order to build a more diverse, a more dynamic system. And we need to approach our teams, our customers, our suppliers in a different way. It's really important, and we are here to be inspired and learn from a very special leader that is doing that, that is going to share the experience. Before that, we are going to take a look on a short video just to introduce us on the theme.
When I was in business school, I was taught this logic of short-term profit maximization, efficiency, control. I was told how to sell as much as possible to as many as possible, how to make my operations lean and efficient. And everything was just based on this underlying assumption that natural resources was this free-for-all, and that human resources, they were best optimized using command and control tactics. Regenerative leaders, they apply life-affirming circular principles into how they produce their products. They make sure everything is reused, recycled, upcycled in this closed loop. They use the circular economy.
And true leadership doesn't come from a title. True leadership came because we put the effort. We took the time to understand what was needed, to focus on the community and the individuals.
We live in a world where change is happening every second. And these rigid hierarchies, they are stalling new decisions. They are often very fear-infused. You don't have to go all the way, but you can integrate pockets of self-organization where you empower your employees to make decisions on the ground based on the values of the company.
If you want to have a team of people who are engaged and you truly value, you want them to bring a different part of themselves and you want them to do things differently, you need to approach leadership in a different way.
Life took over the world thanks to relationships. And we know that the species that have been here the longest has been those that have been best at connecting and creating really strong relationships. And regenerative leaders, they know that. They know that in order to be successful, they need to build win-win-win partnerships where they win, their partners win, and the greater ecosystem on which we depend, they win as well.
If you want to have something that is fundamentally a regenerative business, you need to have a different approach to leadership. And if you're going to have something which is not just for the good of delivering a bottom line, but for the good of nature, for the good of people, you have to have this approach. And that level of adult to adult conversation and honesty and authenticity. I fundamentally think that the way that we will grow as a business is by doing this more and more.
regenerative leaders, they go out of their way and hire people from other educational backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, and they know that it's the unconventional minds that will infuse the entity and the organization with the life and the ideas. They also know that diversity can bring in tension, but that tension often unveils golden nuggets of wisdom, and new ideas emerge in that friction and in that tension. It's a matter of how we deal with that tension when cultures collide. We fail to respect the fact that life has to go through certain phases in order to be whole and to thrive. We need the darkness of the winter. We need the restorative nights. And regenerative leaders understand this. They have incorporated silence into their meetings to anchor and ground the energy. They encourage breaks and meditation, but they also make sure that every time they have been through a growth spurt and launched a new product or put a new idea to market, that they then create a different pace in the work environment.
So to explore this topic, I would like to introduce you to a great leader. Anuradha Chugh is the CEO of Pukka Herbs. As you can see behind her, and she was just drinking tea. It's Pukka Herbs tea, as we have in our office. We all love the tea that you make. She has an experience in leading businesses to create value, a long-lasting and impact-driven leader. She's also a non-executive in boards and a woman entrepreneur mentor. So Anu, welcome to this show, actually. And before we start, I would like to make one final address, Anu, to the audience to also mingle in with the discussion that we will have with you and ask questions that then we will pose to you because we see it on our screen here. So Anu, what does regenerative leadership mean to you?
Thank you for having me, first of all. And I might start by just correcting lightly. It's called Pukka because Pukka is a word in Hindi, which means good and authentic. And I know many people across Europe call it Pukka. So I make it part of my job to correct that and say Pukka. So look, I'll start with Pukka because Pukka is all about, it's an entire business on a mission to create happier, healthier lives through the power of organic plants. And because I talk about organic plants, apologies if a lot of my analogies really come from the plant world, because that's how it helps me to really understand what regeneration is. You know, when you're talking about organic agriculture, when you're talking about growing herbs year on year from land that is regenerating itself, the principles are pretty much the same, because we're talking about how do you create the right nutrients in the ecosystem? How do you create the right environment in the ecosystem to be able to have herbs, have plants that are really good for you, that are really, really good for you, but at the same time, they give back to the soil. And that's what I understand by regeneration. Regeneration for a business, regeneration for leadership is all about creating the ecosystem, creating the right tools, creating the right programs, being very intentional about creating the ecosystem that grows whatever we need to grow, whether it's herbs or whether it is growth, right? Results. But while growing, it also gives back. It gives back, whether it's giving back to the soil, giving back to the person, giving back to the network of suppliers to employees to consumers. And that helps me to understand regeneration. It also helps me to understand my role as a leader and how is it that I can create those right programs, tools, systems, ecosystem, such that people bring their whole selves to life. They don't have to, take a weekend at a spa massage to kind of regenerate themselves, but it is through work that they regenerate themselves as well. So that's in simple language how I understand it.
Yeah, we have now already this audience that understands that it is Pukka herbs, Pukka. Is that correct? Instead of Pukka, I will
That's
never
right,
do it
that's
again.
right.
So, and we will also tell everybody that we ever meet that how you have to pronounce it. You are very much driven as a person, and sometimes people are driven by external things, by law or by whatever. But maybe you can tell us a little bit how you your personal life is in this. How you are intrinsically driven by this.
I think, you go on a journey as well. So I won't reveal my age, but, you go on a journey anyhow through life, and you learn different things in terms of what's important for you. So I think a few years ago, when I felt maybe a bit secure in myself and my career, that's when I really said, listen, how do I leverage the power that I have as a woman leader to give back to others, to help others as well. So it started very much in small ways, where me realizing that I have the power to give back, not one as a role model, but second, more actively to give back to women from more marginalized backgrounds, mentor people within my own organization. And that's how I started. And I think, that's something I've continued. So I'm on a board of a women's organization that really is about mentoring women from leaders and with lived experiences from people from refugee and asylum seeking backgrounds. That's one of the things I do. But I think as you give, and as you give more and more, you realize that one, you have the power to give, and it's very rewarding. And then that's something that I think is just becomes part of you. It becomes part of what you get energy out of. It becomes part of what you find different ways to give.
Yes, and we related to that, we have a very nice question here from Thomas Bourne. How do you see your role as CEO being different in a regenerative context from a classic command and control structure?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think the difference is intentionality. So you've got to really be intentional about the programs you're putting in place. What guides me, I think, is what all gardeners know, which is that if you want great fruits year on year on year, then you need to focus on the soil, the nutrients, what are the other plants that you're planting around in that area to attract the bees. And you've got to be very intentional about it. And I think that's the difference. The difference is that a lot of the time of a leader who's really focusing on a regenerative business and a regenerative culture has to make small things and big things that create that ecosystem their priority. Let me give you some examples. So you see it as a pyramid. So we have programs like we create a program with Eden Project where our top talent goes for 4 or 5 days to really discover themselves. It's a very immersive program. Over the last 5 years, we've sent around 100 of our top talent to this program that we co-created. Now that's at one end. But then at the other end, we have something called Nourish Lunches that happens every Wednesday. And every Wednesday, we have a person coming in and she cooks one common meal, a soup, for all of us in the office. And we all have that soup together. And we have programs during that Nourish Lunch, not every week Wednesday, but every 2 Wednesdays or 3 Wednesdays, which will be about very intentionally planning education, maybe about herbal wisdom, maybe about something on how to be an ally, LGBTIQI, very much about really living and encouraging people to bring their whole selves to work. Because the theory behind this is if you bring your whole self to work, then you will get the empowerment, you will get that extra mile, you will get that passion, which will really get you the end results.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference, I think.
Yeah,
I see a question coming in, Anu, and always I would like that the people ask the questions themselves, but I don't see a name here. So I read the question to you. It says, a regenerative leader on their own can have only limited impact. So what kind of people are the most useful to pick and have around you to strengthen that regenerative culture? So how do you spread it out to a larger world?
A larger group. So I'm lucky to be part of the B Corp community. And I think within the B Corp community, it's a good, thriving community where everyone supports each other to get the most best pioneering ideas in terms of how can we be even better. So it's competitive in a very good way, in a very collaborative way. And I think I really rely a lot on the B Corp community to we do cross mentorship programs. We talk to each other, even as CEOs, we pick the phone and say, wow, I had that situation happen. How did you deal with it? So I rely personally a lot on the B Corp community to help me, but also to just help each other to spread best practices, to understand what is best practices.
Francine, do you want to do a final question?
Yeah, I do. And that's very nice to hear that you trust on your peers to build a regenerative. And I was interested about, in the end, it's all about human being and get people together in the right way. So very inspired. And how do you build partnerships in a win-win situation? Because you gave us a very clear example on how you were working on with your team. How this extends to the consumers and the supply chain?
Yeah, I think when we were quite... So not me, the founder, Sebastian and Tim, when they started, they really had to work across the supply chain in a very intense way, because when you are pioneering, the stuff doesn't exist. The supply chain doesn't exist. You have to create the supply chain. So the high pharmacopoeia grade herbs that we put into our tea, that didn't exist in organic and in a fair cultivation system. So pretty much that had to be created. For example, one of the certifications we have called Fair Wild had to be created together with other suppliers and partners, because we were using, wild fruits and wild flowers, which didn't have a fair certification or a fair ruling. And we literally had to work with supply partners to create a certification that was brand new called Fair Wild, because Fair for Life existed, which was the top system in terms of agricultural produce, but Fair Wild didn't exist. So I think this is an example where when you are pioneering, when you are doing something with really high standards in terms of for our tea to taste really good and to have real benefit, we need pharmacopoeia grade, organic, fair products that didn't exist. And then you have to you're forced to not reduce your standards, but go and work with others to create the supply.
Yeah.
So I think that's an example of where, because you are at such a cutting edge of being pioneering and you are so clear that you're not going to reduce your standards, then you have to bring others along up rather than go down.
Exactly. And this is really connected to the following theme that we are going to discuss, which is resilience. And I believe that a courageous leader needs a lot of resilience. And as you know, thank you. I'll ask you to stay with us because now we are going to shift a bit, but I'll invite you just in a few minutes. Anu, thank you for being with us. So as you know, all the themes from the dialogue series are connected, and we are curating it with a very experienced team of leaders. Marcello Palazzi, co-founder of, welcome Marcello, co-founder of Be for Good Leaders as well. And Christophe Fauconnier, he's the curator of Leadership Track.
So welcome Marcello and Christophe. Great to have you here. As always. Marcello, maybe you can explain a little bit more about the curation process that we're doing for the summit and involve Christophe in that as one of the curators for the leadership.
Fantastic. Well, Christophe and I are good friends, so it could be not a bigger pleasure to have you, Christophe, with us. The curation process, basically, we want action. The summit is not at all a blah, blah, blah. It's actually who is doing what inside this amazing community and how together we learn, we connect, we scale it by being a real community cooperative. So the sort of the guiding principles that we're using, working with Eric of Nativa, we are kind of supervising the curation and the tracks, is really selecting contributors, probably about 120 contributors for the whole summit. We expect 1,200 participants. So about 10% will be contributors in the various tracks. And the curators basically are a bit like the orchestra conductor, is allowing the actual players to come up with their music and their contributions, and in a way guiding it, creating a red thread that goes through each of the tracks. And then eventually at the end of the summit, we connect the tracks into a whole. So this is the sort of process. We will have every day about 4 hours of working time outside of the plenary where people break up in groups, 6 tracks plus additional rooms and sessions where people can go outside of the track in their own interest. So we try to satisfy and meet the needs and interests of everybody. And leadership, Christophe Fauconnier in the Regenerative Alliance, I see also Benoit Grendel with us. They are our partner for regenerative leadership. They did this in Rome already, very, very well, with wonderful contribution. So maybe if this is the right time, Lane and Francine, bring in Christophe and ask Christophe, can you give us a couple of highlights of how the leadership track, say, ended in Rome, so that we can help all of us be a bit up to speed with how we go into the next process into Amsterdam?
Thank you for inviting. Happy to be here. Leadership track at a leadership summit. It's quite a challenge. And I think we've already been inspired. Fundamentally, leadership is a process. And it's about engaging more people into the process. So it's about sharing the abundance that we have. We have such a lot of talent at the summit. And Alexia was last year there. She'll be there this year now. Talking about empathy. Oops, sorry, can't see that, I think. Talking about that empathy is fierce. We'll have people who come and, like Satish, who will share about radical love in combination with neuroscience, in combination with leadership, because fundamentally leadership is a team sport. It's something we do together, and not with foes, where a lot of business always looks at, but with friends. And you have much more courage when we can do it together, when we foster the bonds between us, when we can share a story, be part of a story, a common story, the declaration, when we can cue, because we forget our brains. We're not all smarter people. We must be a smarter group. And a smarter group is a safer group. And a safer group gives a lot of belonging cues. And that's what we'll unlock in Rome. We'll be all what I love to call us scarcity disruptors, because we have to be. We need each other. We need all the love, all the resilience. And that's what we will build together. Build the bonds, build the belonging, gain the courage, build a common story, gain some skills and competences, and create room for all of us to contribute to a beautiful common story.
Marcello, can I ask you a question? You, together with Eric Ezekieli from Nativa, you are the two main curators. Can you give us an insight of how you use all the signs? I believe you get new emails every day from people who want to contribute. Also you, Christophe, maybe you can give us a feeling on how that activity is going on and how we can bring that to action.
So basically, we have a two-way approach. The first is we reach out to people, we invite them to join the summit and contribute. And that is probably about 30-40% of those who are now on the list as contributors. And then we have others who subscribe and register to the summit, or they write in and they express their interest. And they very often, given that this is a very selected and inclusive and selected, I would use. So we are not snobbish, but we want people who are really committed to this, the cause of a new economy. So these people have a lot of passion and energy, and they suggest that they want to be part of the conversation. So we sort of balance, say, the pull and the push, those we invite and those who write to us, to create the best possible set of contributions. And this is an ongoing process. We now have about 800 registration. We will have 1,200 seats, so we still have 400 to go. And people are writing, all the time with suggestions. We have also made created a special program that you suggested, Lane, which is the World Leaders Program for entrepreneurs and business leaders from the Global South. So we have now, I think, about 35 people already signed up. We will go to 100 at least. And these are men and women, many of them actually under 35 or 40, who run businesses, who have amazing experience in sometimes very difficult situations, running a business in the Amazon or in Bangladesh or in South Africa, quite challenging comparison to what perhaps we in Northern Europe have. So very, very interesting mix. And I say probably half are women already. We have a lot of women actually expressing an interest on the whole in the summit. As you can also see here in the discussion, somehow the regenerative leadership attracts women, and we love them to be part of what we are doing because they bring a different dimension. So these are a couple of, a bit of information for you all. So all of you listening, if you have ideas and you wish to contribute, please write in, because this is what we are here for. We are here to get all of us to work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcello. Thank you, Christophe. And everyone here, please, we are building the summit and we need advice. So if you want to see whatever you want to see, that's why you are bringing the curators into these sessions. Please share your ideas with us. It's really, really, really important. And we are moving now to the second part of this leaders dialogue. And as leaders, who intend to build a new economy, resilience is key, is a key skill that we need to have in order to face and to build a new economy. We all know about that, and I think Anu gave us a very nice example regarding resilience. Let's see a short video that brings this concept to us before we move to our next guest.
For me, regenerative leadership starts with the self. I think it's a journey. I don't think it's a textbook skill set that you can read or go on a day and know how to do it. I think it starts with a journey inward.
We need radical interdependence, which is just another way of saying we need each other, even though other people can be really difficult sometimes.
Now, there's some traits that go along with being resilient. Things like self-awareness, flexibility, adaptability, optimism, things like that really help build resilience in a person. Having proper expectations about life, about people, in your pursuits will help ground you.
Now, when you have goals that you can't achieve alone, and you've told everyone about them, inevitably you land up at the third big difference, which is how you see other people, inside your company and outside.
Resilience is the process of adapting well to the face of adversity, challenges, trauma. You also want to have a positive mindset. Have a positive view about yourself and confidence in your strengths and abilities. Whenever doubt creeps in, sit down and review your own accomplishments that you've done in the past and your current strengths and abilities that you have.
In any role we may have, but certainly in the role of economic actors, for well-being, produce well-being, deliver well-being to society. And that is a very close definition of regenerative leadership.
As a leader, our employees look to us almost like a role model. If we throw a temper tantrum, or we get depressed, or we scream at people, then A, they're going to not trust us, and B, they're going to start looking for another place to go. But if they see that we deal with adversity in a professional manner, that we have that optimist outlook, that we know that we will go overcome these challenges, they will also start developing their own resilience, and they will respect you more as a leader.
We now have the privilege to have Alexia Michiels in our midst. She is the co-founder of the Resilience Institute Europe. Welcome, Alexia. And she accompanies people and organizations in a complex environment quite often to build their resilience skills. Alexia will guide us through an interesting conversation about leadership. So welcome, Alexia, in this third leadership dialogue. Maybe we can ask you to first share your experience, and you have a lot of experience in resilience leadership, and then after that lead the whole group into the breakout with questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lane, and thank you for inviting me. I'm very honored to be here with all of you. Well, we have been together about 45 minutes, so I think it's a perfect moment to actually stand up. Many of us have been sitting probably all day long, so please stand, and I can see that some of you are already standing. It will not be long. Well, you can bring your arms up, interlace the fingers, and then press the palms up to the ceiling. And you should really feel that nice stretch as you press the feet down, the palms up. You can then tuck your chin, feel the good stretch for the neck. And then as you bring the arms, you can roll the shoulders backwards. And then finally interlace your fingers behind your back and squeeze the shoulder blades. That should be a perfect counter pose for the many hours that we spent on laptops. All right, and then you can come back on your chair. So thank you for joining me in that micro break. Well, I was thinking that I would start, and I will be brief, but I want to start sharing with you the story of the Resilience Institute, where our story started a bit more than 20 years ago. Dr. Sven Hansen, who is our founder, was then the medical coach of the rugby team, the All Blacks in New Zealand. Anyone knows the All Blacks? You can raise your hands. Yeah, of course. So he was actually training them to reach very high performance while securing their health and well-being. And as he gained some reputation in New Zealand, some companies started calling him to translate these principles internally, like PwC, for example. And that was really more than 20 years ago, so quite pioneer. And he very quickly felt that there was a huge need to do much more prevention in the corporate world, but also to help people organize much better how they can mobilize all of their resources, body, heart, mind, and spirit. And this is what led him to create the Resilience Institute in 2002. So we celebrated our 20th anniversary last year. I met with Dr. Sven Hansen when I lived myself in China. That was many years ago. 14 years ago, I met him. I felt his approach was extremely impactful. It was integral, recognizing these interactions between all the dimensions that compose the human beings. It was also research-based, data-driven, and very practical. So I joined his team, worked with him a year in China, and then we decided to start the activities in Europe, and that was in 2010, already, nearly 13 years ago. Today, we are a team of about 50 people in the US, in Europe, in Asia. And we basically measure, track, and build human resilience in organizations so that people can achieve performance with care. Care for themselves, care for others, and care for the planet. As Anu was mentioning a few minutes ago, it has to be a win-win-win. So this is really what we do. And as I was preparing for today's dialogue, I had to select what I wanted to share with you. So I identified 5 points that I want to underline. Point number 1, considering the huge transformation and the huge challenges in today's world, it's important to keep in mind that people can be enablers, blockers. We want them to be enablers. Point number 2. Well, employees, leaders especially, they need to be equipped to face the high level of uncertainty and these huge challenges with more trust, with courage, and this is also something that you have mentioned already, and with hope and with success. Point number 3, our point of view of the Resilience Institute is that when people are more in tune with their internal ecosystem, when they respect better their personal resources, they tend to be more open to respect the external ecosystem and the external resources. Point number 4, taking action is empowering. We don't want people to feel victim. We want people to make conscious choices, to be responsible, able to make some responses to what happens. And this is why we insist a lot, and that will lead us very nicely to our conversations, to the actions we take on a daily basis, our habits, how we manage ourselves, how we manage the interactions in our teams. And my point number 5 is we are very convinced, and I'm sure we share that conviction, that what gets measured gets attention. So this is why we insist very much on measuring resilience. We have a diagnostic enabling us to measure human resilience in the organization. And we believe that attention energizes. And intentionality, as Anu also mentioned a few times, intentionality transforms. And this is really the heart of our conversation today. How can we accelerate this transformation? So I hope I was brief enough, but these were the 5 key points I wanted to really highlight with you today. Before giving you the words and opening a conversation, we recognize, all of us, that, well, yes, indeed, building our own resilience is a prerequisite, actually, to be a regenerative leader. It is an enabler for transformation. I want to challenge you. I want you to really understand that it's not just about agreeing on some concept. It's really about taking action. So what are you doing yourself to secure, to cultivate, to reinforce your personal resilience? So that will be my first question of reflection. What do you do on a day-to-day basis to secure your own resilience? And my second question, and you can choose in the breakout rooms whether you have time to address both or whether you pick one or the other. Second question is, as a leader, what do you do in your respective teams, in your respective organizations to cultivate resilience in your team, but also to value it? How do you value resilience in your respective teams? And we have heard some examples with Anu about how you actually create an environment that favors resilience. You mentioned silence in some meetings, some informal team gathering during the week. So there are various ways of cultivating resilience, of nurturing relationships. And this is what I suggest you start sharing in the breakout room. So 2 questions. I don't know how many minutes we have. Francine,
We have 15 minutes in the breakout. But before, Alexia, we go into the breakout, there was a quick question from Anu.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Anu, you can... Yeah. Can you pose the question, Anu?
Yeah. It was just, I think Benoit answered it as well, but I just was curious to know what is it that you measure? Do you measure input variables to enable resilience, or do you measure output variables,
Well, actually, it's not a personality test. It's saying you're resilient or you're not resilient. We are measuring people's habits. So we are asking questions that relate to your daily habits, and these may change. We suggest people consider the last 2 weeks, And so this is very much inputs. What do you do on a daily basis? And indeed, we can then elaborate as an output a resilience score that people can identify. They can see what are their strengths, what are their points of attention. And what I find really interesting when I work within organizations is the ability to aggregate the results for a team or for a whole organization. And then you can see trends. You can identify what are the main strengths we have in our organizations, what are the key risks we have, how can we track it over time. We can also compare with internal benchmarks, compare different geographies or different teams, but also with external benchmarks, which I can see is really valuable because organizations like to be compared as well to other corporate benchmarks. So the intention is really to measure it, to make it quite tangible so that people are motivated to consider some adjustments in their daily actions.
Thank you, Alexia. We will now, I think, automatically go into the breakouts for 15 minutes. I remind everybody again, Alexia, on your 2 questions. What do I do myself to secure my personal resilience, and how do I cultivate and value resilience in my team? Have fun.
I hope you had a good time together. People are starting to coming back, and we still have some minutes to discuss, and we would love to listen how was the experience. Alexia is here with us, and she will guide the discussion.
I had a great discussion in my small group, and maybe we can ask whether anyone would like to share a small step that you have applied in your team, in your organization, that you have really observed as having a great impact, because we believe a lot in small steps. It's not about making huge revolutions. Sometimes simple practices can really make a difference in a team. So I'd be curious to hear whether some of you would like to share what are some small steps, simple practices that you have been able to implement in your team.
Alexia, as you probably can imagine, which I think you and I talked about it before, the question is, how do you really connect resilience with regeneration? Because you can be resilient and not regenerative. But we concluded, I think, Florent, that you cannot be regenerative without being resilient.
You can give the word to Thomas.
Well, that's a very nice summary. Well, I think, resilience can be understood in different ways. In our language, resilience is about having a positive impact on yourself, on others, and on your environment. So with that perspective, it is very connected to regenerative leadership. It's really about making sure that you protect your own resources, making sure that you regenerate yourself so that you can still give to others. It's really hard to be a good leader and to contribute positively when you're exhausted, when you are ignorant of your own limitations. So regenerating yourself so that you can impact positively the others, give back, and keep in mind the influence of your choices on your environment. And that means not just your corporate environment, but the environment at large. So for us, conscious leaders, resilient leaders are well aware of the influence of their behaviors or the behaviors of their teams on the environment at large. So that's connecting very much to regenerative leadership.
Yes, and I see here that Thomas has a very nice tip to us. Maybe he can share a little bit. Thomas?
Yes, hi, and sorry, I'm not on video because I'm currently regenerating after with a back problem. But my tip and the discussion, lovely discussion I had in our little group. So in our business, we strive to be as close to nature as possible, both in terms of the inspiration we take and the way we operate, but also physically encouraging our teams to be in nature. We have immersions in an ancient woodland every year, and and individually we try and be in nature because I think she has a lot to teach us, and there is inherent sort of comfort and resilience and energy to be had, and I think really it's through disconnection with nature that a lot of the world's problems have come about. So yes, I heartily commend it to everyone.
Great practice, Thomas. Thanks for sharing. Is the level of consciousness of the organizations is very rarely higher than the level of consciousness of the leaders. And this is also true for resilience. And indeed, what we can measure with the tool we have is the aggregated results of an organization gives us a resilience score. And when you compare it to the resilience score of the leadership team, nearly systematically, the leadership team has a higher score. So the reverse is very rarely true. And I think that's a very great opportunity for all of us in our respective perimeter of influence to recognize that as you build your own resilience and the resilience of your direct team, indirectly, it benefits as well the other people in your organization.
Alexia, I think we should invite Anu and Christopher again. So we have the three of you here. And for some final questions from us, but as far as the audience wants, also from the audience. So Christophe, Anu, and Alexia, if I may ask you a question, and think about CEOs that would like to start going onto a path of resilient, regenerative leadership. What would your advice be? So maybe I can start with you, Christophe, because ladies always go first, and this time now you're so lonely in the middle. So why don't you give us an advice?
You are on mute.
You're on mute. Very nice.
Yeah. So thank you for the opportunity. I live in France, and I was a non-French person, to be clear. And I just had a meeting with a lot of great and very excellent entrepreneurs. And what I see, the advice I would give them is they don't have to be so excellent. They have to be courageous and ready to be vulnerable. And by being vulnerable, they can gain such a lot of support. And by being so excellent, and you become very often so alone. So I think we just have to understand that courage is exposure, it's vulnerability. And for that, you need lots of friends, not only foes. So that would be my short advice.
Very good one.
Maybe you, Anu?
I think that leaders do have a good understanding of resilience in their own life, because they've not climbed the ladder by not having resilience. They've had resilience for them to climb the ladder. But my advice to them would be to not keep it in the closet, but to really bring it out and talk very openly about building resilience and make that into a system, an ecosystem like I talked about, for the whole team. Because it is there. It's possibly there on the weekend when they go cycling or when meditating by themselves quietly, but they're not sharing that with the others. Maybe because there is a stigma, maybe because they'll not be seen as all that tough if they share the resilience practices they have. And I think we know it's the reverse. So I loved the stats that Alexia, you shared, that if the C-suite has a lot of resilience building techniques, then actually they lift the whole organization. And I think that would be my advice. So bring it out of the closet, share, and not only share your resilience practice, but make it a common practice across your organization.
And what is your advice, Alexia?
Well, building on what you just said, and I would say make it simple and make it measurable. I really believe that it is what drives people's energy to consider changing their habits or taking the right actions. But if you want one specific recommendation, if I have to choose one, I really believe leaders need to create more time to reflect. I observe leaders are on the rush. Myself, sometimes I'm in that trap. I run too much, literally, but clearly as well on my day-to-day, I have too much on my to-do list. And I believe it is a discipline and a responsibility, but let's call it an opportunity for leaders to make sure they have in the agenda a slot dedicated to reflection. 1 hour per week as a minimum at the end of the week, maybe, or maybe at the start of the week, when you decide to reflect about what really matters this week, or what has been achieved this week, or give yourself the opportunity to go deeper in a specific topic, because otherwise you are caught up by urgencies, and that's definitely not the sign of regenerative leadership.
Yeah, and I'm interested, before we go to the final part here, I would like to make it a bit more personal and understand what is the fuel that you have, because I know the three of you are amazing leaders, you are really resilient, you are leading an organization. Where do you find the strength and fuel yourselves to get through and lead your organizations? What energizes you? What do you do?
So seeing, I'll keep to pattern because it's a routine now. I surround myself with wonderful people. For me, connecting is a source of energy, and being surrounded by people who have a generosity of spirit and are friends, not always foes, because in business we like to look at who we can beat, not who we can support. I try and practice that every day. If I feel lonely, I phone Marcello, or I phone Alexia, or surround yourself with wonderful connections.
Very good. What about you, Anu? Do you drink tea?
Yeah. Yes, I drink tea. That's a very good point. I drink a lot of Pukka tea. No, look, I have lots and lots of little things. But if I summarize it, morning practice, my diary, journaling, tea, lots of gardening, lots of little things. But I think if I kind of put it down, it's like I put a smart meter. So I'm quite careful to monitor for myself my smart, like your own personal energy smart meter. And I know if it's kind of going on empty fuel for a while, then I've got to do something more drastic. And then I will take, a more drastic approach of calling a friend. Not that drastic, but, someone who really kind of fills me back. So it's a lot of little things that keep fueling me, but also having a sense to monitor that, hey, it's not what my little things are not helping. I need something else.
Yeah. And it's every day.
And every day.
Yeah. Alexia?
Well, I also have lots of simple practices that I put in place nearly every day. But if I have to choose one, I would say that living in Switzerland, we are very spoiled with nature. And nature for me is a wonderful way to recenter myself and to re-energize myself. So what I do nearly every day, I go 5 minutes in the lake. So I live very close to the Lehman Lake, Geneva Lake. So 5 minutes in the lake, whatever the temperature of the lake. Today it was 7 degrees, so that's quite re-energizing. 5 minutes, not a second more, but it's a practice that works really nicely for me. It really helps me.
Yeah. And Lynn, maybe you can share your little thing as well.
To re-energize myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I walk the dog. And that is, especially when it's raining, I don't like that. But I'm happy that I don't have to swim in a lake of 7 degrees, Alexia, because you must really get used to that. So I get my energy from walking, and I'm actually happy that I have a dog, because otherwise I would probably not go for a walk. And I would sit with my shoulders like this, Alexia. So I'm very happy that you did your practice like this, because that's the pain that you feel if you sit too much behind your screen. And having said that, I would like to thank all of you and everybody who has been here, because I think we have come to the end of this 1 hour and a half. I see a question coming, but the typist stops. So I'm going to round up this meeting with a couple of remarks that I would like to make. First of all, we should never ever forget that it is not Pukka tea, but Pukka tea. So we will not forget that. The second thing I would like to say is on May 11 and 12, we have our summit. I'm very excited about how that goes. It's a beautiful organization, not only because on the second day of the summit, we celebrate the 10-year anniversary of B-Lab Europe. So the evening of the second day in the summit, we will have 1,000 extra young and older people from B Corps coming to do a festival and where we celebrate the 10-year anniversary. Well, as Marcello said, we have 1,200 people max. Sometimes we think we have 1,400 spaces in a beautiful, beautiful building, which is called the Beurs van Berlage. Very difficult to pronounce by Francine, so that is why I'm saying it. The Beurs van Berlage is an old building that used to be a trading floor between companies. Not trading shares, but trading products. And that is actually what we want to do now as well. So all the people that come, all the companies that come, want to do action. We want to bring them into action by trading amongst each other. And finally, and Francine will say it again, we have a next dialogue series. We do that every month on March 23. So we want to create, as Paolo said, a space for action and a space for connection at the summit. That's what the summit is for. It's not a place where people sit and listen. It's actually a place of activity.
Yeah, and if you have any suggestions, again, please feel free to email us. We are very open to feedback, and we want to make this an engaging moment always. And so we have come to the end of the third dialogue series. It's been a pleasure to be with all of you. I would like to thank you, our roundtable guests, Anuradha, Alexia, Christophe, Marcello, Paolo, Lynn. And it was a pleasure to be with all of you here today. And we hope you come, we welcome again you to the next dialogue series. It's going to be on March 23rd. We're going to have Emmanuel Faber and amongst other amazing leaders to discuss about sustainable finance, which is a very interesting topic. And I cannot forget to thank the staff of IT Global that's been here with us today, especially Frank van de Ven, the owner and CEO of the company, and that helps us with this studio. And last but not least, thank you all to be here to spend this time in this afternoon or morning, maybe, I don't know where you are today. Be inspired. Thank you.